And news item number 1 was Mtukufu Rais, Mtukufu Makamu wa Rais, Minister for Finance, Provincial Administration. Other types of news segments were left out because of what I've just mentioned. Now, the latest technology that we're talking about, which is in vogue and which is bringing a lot of challenges, is what the Tanzanians call akili mnemba, artificial intelligence. That artificial intelligence is literally taking over what journalists are doing. And artificial intelligence now can be used to manipulate images, to manipulate content, or even to do content. So that as journalists, if you rely entirely on akili mnemba for the production of some articles or news items without your individual involvement, what moral claim would you have to that particular article? Would you say that's yours? Would you claim copyright in that particular article? Another challenge. The other thing that we are seeing in a digital media is the mushrooming of all sorts of creators of news content. We have citizens journalism, that's alternative media, who can feed the public in real time with news. But the issue has always been, is that news counteracted with fact-finding, or is it news just for the sake of it? Secondly, in news, in digital environment, images that are posted, some of them are explicit, and they go against the journalistic ethics. Sometimes images of people who have died in a road accident or have been killed are just displayed holistically without being sensitive to the next of kin. The other aspect that we have seen is also guerrilla journalism, which is also emerging. And those are the challenges that we are going to experience from the time, and I don't want to discuss much because the expert is here, an eminent judge of the Supreme Court of Kenya. He has had a wealth of experience, and I don't want to waste much of your time because I think you are eager to hear from him. So it's my honor and pleasure to welcome my friend, my colleague, Justice Isaac Lenaola. Can you clap for him? Justice, karibu. Sorry. I've been told that it's not yet. There are other speakers because I was never really told the order in which I wish I was told. So let me hand over the mic to the person in charge now to guide us on the next item on the menu.
Thank you so much. Asanteni sana. Let's appreciate him one more time. Tafadhali. Makofi ya kilo. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take this opportunity to invite, before we get to a man who does not need any introduction but gets one anyway, before we get there, I'd like to invite Chairperson, Media Complaints Commission, that is Mr. Demas Kiprono. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Demas Kiprono.
Thank you very much. My name is Demas Kiprono, Chairperson, Media Complaints Commission, and also Deputy Executive Director at the International Commission of Jurists. Incidentally, I did my master's thesis on regulation of artificial intelligence. So this is a very interesting topic to me. Let me read my remarks. I sent my regards. I sent regards from Mr. Omoyo, David Omoyo, who is the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya. Supreme Court Judge, Honorable Justice Isaac Lenaola, Dr. Hezekiah Oira, Mr. Mwenda Njoka, distinguished media practitioners, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is an honor to be part of this important discussion on media regulation and ethics in the digital age. A conversation that could not be more timely. Freedom of expression and free press are not just constitutional rights under Article 33 and 34 of the Constitution, they are the bedrock of democracy. These rights apply both online and offline, ensuring that Kenyans can speak, debate, and hold power to account and receive information, whether through a newspaper, a broadcast, or a tweet. Political discourse, people seeking, receiving, and imparting information, ideas, has majorly gone online. The 2024 Finance Bill debate started online. Kenyans broke records on X space in terms of attendance and in terms of how long they took. But with rights come responsibilities. Under Article 33 and Article 34(5), media regulation is institutionalized through the Media Council Act, which establishes two key bodies. Number one is the Media Council of Kenya, which advocates for press freedom, trains journalists, sets professional standards, accredits journalists, advises the government, investigates infringements, and safeguards journalists' rights. The other body is the Media Complaints Commission, where I serve, which adjudicates disputes between the public and the media, between the government and the media, and between media houses themselves. The digital revolution has transformed media in ways we could not have imagined a decade and a half ago. In the past, publishing was the domain of a select few. Editors acted as gatekeepers, deciding what was news. Today, digitization has democratized information, giving everyone a platform. Every newspaper is now digital. Every TV station streams online. And citizens engaged with news in real time through social media. But this shift brings challenges. While bloggers and social media users are bound only by platform community guidelines and constitutional limits, for example, restrictions on propaganda for war, hate speech, advocacy for hatred, incitement to violence, and protection of children from exploitation, the professional journalists must adhere to the code of conduct on the practice of journalism. They are held to a higher standard, which includes fact-checking, the right of reply, privacy protection, guidelines on the use of pictures, and so on and so forth. Even as unregulated bloggers can publish anything. The media industry has adapted, expanding digital presence, exploring paywalls, and leveraging new technologies. Yet sustainability remains a struggle and misinformation thrives while standards lapse. The Media Council has developed guidelines on the use of AI, social media, and data protection for media practitioners in Kenya. Please familiarize yourselves with it. AI is now writing stories, editing, generating images. What does that mean for content, and what does that mean for journalism? As we navigate this evolving landscape, we must ask, how do we balance press freedom with accountability? How do we uphold ethics without stifling innovation? These are the questions we grapple with daily as the Complaints Commission. We are privileged today to hear from Honorable Justice Lenaola, whose insights on constitutionalism, technology, and the law will guide this critical dialogue. Thank you, and let us now listen and learn and engage.
Asante sana. Another round of applause tafadhali for Mr. Demas Kiprono from the Media Council of Kenya. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. Now, Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce a man whose leadership echoes in the airwaves of Radio 47, on the screens of TV 47. This man is a storyteller at heart, a journalist by training, a leader by purpose, and one who understands not just the power of media, but the weight and the responsibility in today's digital era. From investigative reporting to boardroom strategy, he has worn many hats, and somehow all of them fit. Okay? Please join me in welcoming a media trailblazer that is none other than Mr. Mwenda Njoka, the CEO, Cape Media Limited. Makofi ya kilo kwa bwana CEO tafadhali.
Thanks, Andrew. Habari zenu. Good morning, everybody. Honorable Justice Lenaola, Damas, MCK Chair, Compliance Chair, Dr. Oira, Director, and all of you here. Karibuni sana, and thank you so much for taking time on a Saturday, and especially those ones who are SDA and also those ones who are not, because Saturday is your day. So I appreciate that you created time to be here, both from Cape Media and the MKU Parklands campus. Just show of hands, let me see Cape Media ni wangapi. Just, yeah, just as Lenola, this is our team, Cape Media from radio, TV, digital. Alafu, let me see, MKU. Okay, that's also a good number. So these are also from MKU, students of law, I believe. Yeah, so when we said that we are going to have this event here, we talked with the management and they said that it's good that the students come here. Actually, they wanted much more. We would have had a larger number if the space allowed, but unfortunately the space was limited. So for me, because it's not my day, we had a longer program, lakini kwa sababu the judges also has another engagement by 1:30, so we want to be sure that we are done by that time. So apologies, my team leaders were some who are supposed to speak, but tumetoa kwa list because of time. So even me, I'll make very brief remarks, alafu, because the day is for Justice Lenaola, it's not our day. And then also I want you guys to interact. So for me, I would want to speak almost extra, it's called what, extra? Yeah, that one. So from my experience, when we got into media, many years ago, before many of you were born here, the situation was very different. We had very stringent laws, we had sedition laws, we had, there was also something called a criminal, defamation. Yeah, defamation. Very stringent laws that could land you just for writing something or saying something on radio or TV could land you in a lot of trouble. And sometimes if you get into sedition, like for instance, you are charged with sedition, you could go in even for 7 years. And sedition is just maybe making a comment that was inimical to the interest of the state or the president. And then fast forward, 1990s, the constitution changed. We had, we had multi-party, we had all these other changes, including the new constitution. That changed circumstances to the extent that the law allowed or created a room for a lot of freedom, for a lot of also proliferation of media. Because you go back around 20 years ago, FM stations were, 20, 30 years ago, we had only KBC and KTN. And then after that, the situation changed to the extent that now there was a proliferation of media. And then after that, fast forward to the digital age, now you have a situation where now anybody with a smartphone can be a journalist, isn't it? Mtu anaangalia anaona kitu, maybe an accident, you shoot, as the damas are saying here. Somebody posts photos and images that are not, that will hurt somebody's interest and that will hurt somebody's image. So we have a situation where now we have almost what you would call a Wild West in the media. where almost anything goes. We don't have the kind of controls and systems that were there during. I'm not saying that we should go back there, but when you have a situation where what you do, or what you, as a media person, as a media practitioner, whether it's digital or the normal media, TV and radio, what you do, images that you post, words that you put out there, or sounds, can hurt somebody. How do you ensure that there's accountability, that somebody is responsible in terms of what they are posting out there? So the reason we are here is to have somebody who has seen it all, from the single party days of when Kenya had a single party, when Kenya didn't have the kind of freedom we have, up to the time we are here now. Somebody also who has been involved in the formulation of the Constitution, in the formulation of freedoms that we have. How do we, that's the person we have here to give us some explanation, some understanding of the circumstances then, now, and in the future. How do we navigate that space to ensure that what we do does not cause us trouble as journalists, as communicators, because everybody is a communicator. Because right now, as we said, you have don't assume, maybe you are a law student, you go to your TikTok, umepata picha ya mtu fulani, unasambaza, you can still be charged, you can still end up in a lot of trouble. So that is the space we are in now, and that is what we want the judge to explain to us from a point of knowledge. Sitting on the other side, he is an arbitrator, he has seen it all, so that he can give us some perspectives, we can ask questions, and then when we leave here, we'll be wiser and better programmed for the future. So for me, that is all I have to say. I'll ask Andrew just to make a few remarks in terms, so that you have an understanding of the person we have here, and where he has been, what he has done, before I welcome the judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Bwana CEO. Let's appreciate him one more time. Asanteni sana. So for me, it's just to give an overview of who Honorable Justice Isaac Lenaola is before he comes on stage. He is an alumni of the University of Nairobi and the Kenya School of Law. After admission to the bar, he practiced law in Nairobi, specializing in commercial law and land law. He has also served as a commissioner at the People's Commission of Kenya, that is PCK, and at the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, CKRC. He joined the Judicial Service in the year 2003 and worked as a resident judge in Embu, Meru, Machakos, Kakamega High Courts as a High Court judge. Honorable Lenaola also served as a commissioner at the Judicial Service Commission, where he also served as chairman, Human Resource and Administration Committee. Until his appointment as judge of the Supreme Court, Judge Lenaola was the presiding judge of the Constitutional and Human Rights Division at the High Court in Milimani, Nairobi, where he rendered illuminating and groundbreaking decisions on human rights, devolution, separation of power, among other areas of jurisprudence. He is the president of the Advisory Council of the Strathmore Institute for Advanced Studies in International Criminal Justice and the president of the International Association of Refugee and Migration Judges. He is also the chairman of the Judicial Action Group and a member of the Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges Association. He was awarded the Law Society of Kenya Award for the Distinguished Service in the Administration of Justice in the year 2008, the East African Law Society Honorary Membership Award for the Exemplary Service and the Development of Jurisprudence in the Kenya and the East African region in the year 2015, as well as Distinguished Service Awards in the service of the International Association of Refugee and Migration Judges. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a deep profile, isn't it? I will invite our CEO to invite him, because that is beyond. Yes.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So it's my singular honor to invite and welcome Justice Lenaola, who also happens to be the chair of the Judiciary Communications Committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, my friend Mwenda Njoka. Let me recognize the Dean, Hezekiah Oira, my friend Dimas from the Media Council, and my classmate and friend, Nancy Kabaki. So the lawyers, you should know, my only claim to fame is that I was her classmate across the road. We were the first lot together with them who were moved from the University of Nairobi main campus to the Parklands campus in 1988. And so this was, at the time, it was called the School of Professional Studies, before it became Inorero, before it became NKU. So we are dinosaurs when we speak about this building because we are as old as the building. Let me thank Cape Media for inviting me here, and particularly because prior to this invitation, I was not too well known to the work that you do at TV 47 and Radio 47. So in preparation, I read a few things about yourselves, and I'm quite happy that I now know that Cape Media is a trailblazer, especially in the digital era and the digital world. But more importantly, it's got an echo, so I'm struggling. But more importantly, let me thank you, Cape Media, for remaining anchored on the principles of integrity, accountability, and a mission-driven commitment to serve the public both responsibly and dynamically. I encourage you never to waver in the quest for excellence in these matters. In the new world spoken to by my colleagues who spoke before me, there is a need for media and for journalists to understand that the changing landscape demands more responsibility of you than those in the era of Mwenda Njoka. And so for me, the need for ethical and legal frameworks that govern reporting, publishing, and republication. And please note my words, republication, because later when I speak, I'll speak to the misguided, mistaken view that if I'm not the originator of content, I only republish content, then I'm safe. You are not safe. So I think it's important that we begin from understanding that. And therefore, a strong grasp of the principles of responsible journalism is now more critical than ever, particularly in combating the rise of disinformation, cyberbullying, and online harassment, which are increasingly prevalent in today's digital media platforms. It is within this context that I now wish to speak to a limited part of the conversation we are having on media ethics. I will focus on defamation, because I think by speaking to defamation, I'll speak to other aspects of what is required of you. Dimas spoke about freedom of expression. I will not repeat what Article 33 says. But I will quote from a judgment, from a decision of the United Kingdom in the case of Handyside versus United Kingdom, of the European Court of Human Rights judgment. It says, freedom of expression constitutes one of the essential foundations of democratic society, one of the basic conditions for its progress and for the development of every man. Subject to Article 10.2 of the Convention on Human Rights, it is applicable not only to information or ideas that are favorably received or regarded as inoffensive or as a matter of indifference, but also to those that offend, shock, or disturb the state or any sector of the population. Such are the demands of that pluralism, tolerance, and broad-mindedness without which there is no democratic society. So that it is wrong to assume that freedom of expression is only that which speaks to the likable, the sweet, the nice. In fact, it includes what these judges said, that which offends, which shocks or disturbs the state or any sector of society. But of course, we must also appreciate that the scope of expression is broad and raises global concerns, but as Dimas said, in Article 33, there are limitations to this right. One of the tests of whether freedom of expression has been properly applied and demonstrated are these three components. Number one, that if you are to limit the right, then the limit must not be unfair and must not be arbitrary. And then the limit to the right must also not be, should not impair the right in question in a way that impacts on the entire right, so that the right, the limitation to the right should not be overly disturbing to the right. And let me give you an example of the story that Mwenda Njoka spoke about, what was then Section 194 of the Penal Code. Those of you, I look at the group, at the audience here, and you all look like you are not around or you are very young when people were being chased around these streets because of certain rights that we were fighting for before 1990. Section 194 of the Penal Code was a subject of a case called Jacqueline Okota versus and another versus the Attorney General. Jacqueline Okota and Jackson Njeru moved the court to declare Section 194 of the Penal Code unconstitutional. Now, Section 194 spoke to criminal defamation, what Mwenda Njoka spoke about. And then Judge Mativo, in finding that that section is unconstitutional, said that criminal defamation was aimed to protect individual interest, while the limitations under Article 24 seek to protect public interest as opposed to individual or public interest. So that that section, which was a null section of the law, was found to be unconstitutional because it limited the rights to freedom of expression in a most inhibitive manner. But that is not even the problem. The problem is what we found in the case of a guy who, those of you who are on Twitter would know, a guy called Robert Alai. Robert Alai is, I believe, the MCA for Kilileshwa. In this particular case, Robert Alai was charged with undermining authority of a public officer under Section 132 of the Penal Code. You are lucky because I'm a public officer here, and this law is declared unconstitutional. Had you tried to undermine my authority in this hall, I'm afraid would have taken you to the DCI. What did Robert Alai tweet? He tweeted, "Insulting Israel is what Uhuru can do. He hasn't realized the value of the presidency. Adolescent president. This seat needs maturity." So after Alai tweeted those words, he was arrested and charged with undermining the authority of a public officer, in this case, the president. Robert Alai said to the High Court, Section 132 is unconstitutional because it limits my right to expression. The judge who wrote the judgment decided to look at the history of this section. This section was enacted in 1958 at the height of the state of emergency, so that it was enacted in a context. Then it was supposed to then manage how Kenyans, the Mau Mau and others, treated the governor of Kenya at that time, the people who were in authority. The judge then said, in his view, first, what does undermining the authority of a public officer mean? Those of you who went to good French schools like myself, I'm sure you'll notice that there's a problem with undermining authority. How do you, by words tweeted, those words, how did Alai undermine the authority of the president? Did the president cease being president? Did he cease having authority of the president? It did not. So the judge says the words were vague, they were unclear, they didn't make sense. That's number one. Number two, the judge said, if you look at that section and the history of that section, it has no place in today's Kenya. And so that section was declared unconstitutional, so you are safe if you try to undermine me today. While there, a few things were said about artificial intelligence, deep fakes, hallucinations, artificial intelligence, and all those things. I wish I had time to speak about artificial intelligence in the context, especially of we, the judges, and you, the media. Those of you who may have seen a tweet, which was done, I believe, by the judiciary, about a speech I made last week. And I was telling lawyers, be careful with how you use artificial intelligence. I was not saying do not use artificial intelligence. In fact, my words were, while we encourage the use of technology, let us be careful because of the things we have seen in courts, in Brazil, in Canada, in the US, in Colombia, where judges have been disciplined because of misuse of AI. When you ask artificial intelligence to, whether it's DeepSeek or ChatGPT, to write for you a judgment, that case does not know that this man from Mandera has his case cannot be known by the cloud. It cannot be known by artificial intelligence because his case is very simple. He was arrested in Ramu or Griftu. He was charged up with a specific offense. Artificial intelligence cannot do about Mandera. We are saying contextualize your use of artificial intelligence to the case before you. And now we are finding that because we have apps that can tell you. Last night I looked at a speech which I had written with the use of artificial intelligence, but which I tinkered with to sound more smart. When I took it through that app, it told me that 70% of that speech was written by AI and 30% was written by me. Now, if you take a judgment or submissions to a judge where 70% is written by AI and 30% by yourself, that is the height of injustice. So if a judge were to write a judgment with AI and the 70% is hallucinations, what judgment is that? It is not a judgment in Kenyan law. Let me move very quickly to responsible journalism. The Media Council Act outlines the following principles, I think, which are important for you. One, accuracy and fairness. You are expected to be unbiased. You must give every side a chance to explain themselves and then write a story which has both sides in it. Independence. Journalists we must all defend the independence of all journalists from those seeking to influence or control news content. Integrity. Do not pay news sources or solicit gifts. A few years back, and I think even today, there are journalists who are called the brown envelope journalists. Brown envelope journalists are those, and I hope none is in this room because I walk out if there are, those who receive a bahasha to make news for somebody, to write well about somebody, to kill a story about somebody. That is unethical. And the fourth is the opportunity to reply. Always afford the other person the opportunity to reply. More and more I'm seeing content news where it is one-sided. Let me give you a story. A gentleman died the other day in a plane in Sudan. The media went to town with a story that this pilot was transporting arms for a particular militia. I read those stories very, very closely because I knew the young man. Not once did any of the media houses seek to hear from his family, from his employers, from his colleagues. It was a one-sided story, salacious, interesting. But was it a balanced story? Did they give the other side a chance? Having now laid down those principles, let me go to the subject of my conversation before I go to the digital era. As journalists, as media houses, you suffer the brutal hand of the law in something called defamation. A few years ago, one media house in Kenya, and I spoke to journalists like this about defamation, they were telling me that the media house was about to shut down because of awards of damages by the High Court against that media house. At the time, they were sitting on hundreds of millions because of defamation. And when I spoke to them, it occurred to me that they had not been trained to understand the limits of this freedom of expression and freedom of the media, where do you stop before you get sued? And if you get sued, what is your defense? Another media house which I spoke to had held back his journalists in terms of what they could write, the headlines, the stories, and they told me their bill for damages was lower. I pity the insurance company for the other media house, because obviously, and I'll come to a little story about myself and that media house later. Section 23 of the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act says a person who knowingly publishes information that is false, mark the word false, in print, in broadcast, data, or of a computer system that is calculated or results in panic, chaos, or violence among citizens of the Republic, or which is likely to discredit the reputation of a person, commits an offense, and shall on conviction be liable to a fine not exceeding 5 million shillings, or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years, or to both. So that if you publish false information which discredits the reputation of a person, you are committing a criminal offense. And that's why I said it's a word false. And 10 years is not short, huh? Neither is 10 years plus 5 million an easy sentence. Ni chungu sana. Similarly, hate speech is punishable under the National Cohesion and Integration Act. And hate speech is the use or spread of content that is threatening, abusive, or insulting, and the intent to stir up ethnic hatred. There are other offenses under that act. In the case of Elisha versus Republic, a 2023 judgment, a chief was sued, was arrested and charged for making certain statements, and the statements were insulting but could not amount to abusive words. And the judge said, I abhor the tendency to use criminal justice to deal with matters essentially defamatory. And man must be able to protect his character, if any, without the aid of state power. What the judge was saying is precisely what I said earlier. We are moving away as a country from invoking criminal jurisdiction to punish offensive statements and saying, go to the civil courts, seek damages, but don't arrest and charge a man for calling another one, where umbwa. And when you're called an umbwa, what will you say that, what is the insult there? If your habits are those of a dog. What is defamation? Defamation in law is, and this is for the young lawyers, of course you know there are two sides to defamation. There's libel, which is written, and then there's slander, which is spoken. I had some cases which I looked at, but I think of importance is that defamatory imputation is when you expose a man or a woman to hatred, contempt, or ridicule, or to injure their reputation. And what the courts and the law says is for you to prove defamation, you must show that a right-thinking member of society has understood the words used against another person to be of contempt and to ridicule that person. So we always ask ourselves, even if you are called a dog, if you are to go to your village, what do they think about you? So you remember this story of a man who died, and when he was buried, they wrote this obituary where they said, this man was a thief, he was a rapist, he was a murderer, fare thee well. So if that is the image you have, and everybody says this is how the character is, that is not defamation. And later I'll come again to the defenses that you have. So for a person to prove defamation, I would like to continue from where I stopped. The statements complained of must be defamatory in character. And that means they are false, like I said, and they harm a person's reputation. The statements in harming the reputation must lower the image of that person in the eyes of the public and expose them to public hatred, contempt, or ridicule, or cause them to be shunned or avoided. I want to stop on those words because if the defamation does not affect you in a way that, for example, people stop mixing with you, people stop hanging out with you, then the defamation is hard to prove. An important part of defamation is that the statements, the offensive statements, must be communicated or published to someone other than the person complaining. So publication of the defamatory statements is a crucial aspect of defamation. So unless it is given to Ndimuli or it is given to my brother, and then they perpetuate it. If it's just me and Ndimuli, then nobody has heard us. That is enough. There's no defamation attaching to him or to me because we have not publicized it beyond. But now you must appreciate why we must continue discussing defamation in the context of social media and the digital age. One tweet, if you're a guy like my friend Gran Muller, by the way, he was our classmate with Nancy. If you're a guy like Gran Muller who brags that he has now 1 million followers, I think there are more. If you tweet, if Ahmed Nasir tweets something, and then you retweet, now from the 1 million, and you have 500,000, that one statement will receive an audience of 1.5 million. So the publication in this age is becoming so tricky. They must be careful how we use it. Back to public figures. It has now been settled in law that defamation claims against public figures like myself, that's why I suffer defamation every single day and I've not sued, such as politicians and judges like me, require a higher standard of proof than claims against you, a private individual. In New York versus Sullivan, the American courts held that a public figure must prove that a defendant acted with actual malice when making a false statement that harmed their reputation. Actual malice means that the defendant either knew that the statement was false or recklessly disregarded the truth. In the case of Jacoyo Midiwo and Royal Media Services, the court says that the rule in New York Times does not protect inaccurate and unfactual publication of disparaging matters that is made recklessly in disregard of the truth. So that even if the rule in Sullivan, in New York versus Sullivan, says we in public office must suffer a lot more pain of defamation than others, where the statements are recklessly false, you'll still be attaching defamation. If you remember the late Jacoyo Midiwo's case, someone had gone to Royal Media and said, Jacoyo, may his soul rest in peace, was seen at a street of ill repute downtown at 7 o'clock soliciting for those ladies of the night, which he denied. So he got awarded damages in that regard. Suppose you are sued as a newspaper, as a media house, as a journalist, and you have to defend yourself. What are your defenses? The first defense is the defense of absolute and statutory qualified privilege. Just call it privilege. And it says, qualified privilege is where the reporting is in matter of public concern, legislative or judicial proceedings, public registries, official notices, public company meetings, and more. What this means is that if it's a record you extracted, if it's minutes of my company, if it's my judgment you have extracted, if it's a parliamentary Hansard proceedings, official documents, then you are safe because those are not your words. It's not you created the language. It is that record that you're using. Fair and accurate reporting is a condition often required for the privilege to apply, meaning the report must not distort or misrepresent the facts. So if you come to my judgment and you pick my judgment and then instead of quoting verbatim what I said, you give your own opinion, story zako za jaba, unaongeza hapo kwa, then of course you cannot seek a privilege. In this particular case, called Rogers Abisai, the Court of Appeal found that the report in question was not confined to judicial proceedings because the reporter gathered information from people he interviewed after the proceedings. So what the journalist did, he took the judicial proceedings went and interviewed other people who said very bad things about the advocate. Now, obviously, the defense of privilege has stopped the moment you created your story zako za kando, and then you say that you're privileged. You are not. In the case of Nation Media versus Movea, the Court of Appeal said that the appellants, now Nation Media, permitted persons to air their views or comments in live broadcasts on matters that are not before the court. So what happens, as you notice, in the morning, and I'm sorry I've not watched many of your content, they have these talk shows in the morning. So you have the newspaper story. So there's a story about a case that is before the court. And then what happens, the journalist, again I must point to Ndimuli because I watched him a lot. So when you ask your questions, and then these characters, your panel, start explaining their own version of the case. You cannot come and say, I'm privileged because I was discussing a court case. You removed yourself from the court case and the court proceedings once they were airing their opinions and you publicized. Remember my word about publication. Once it's on air, you have publicized. And so, again, the defense cannot attach. The second defense is what is called common law qualified privilege. And this is where the media has a duty to publish information of public interest, and the public has a corresponding interest in receiving it. So this is matters of public interest. You know, Mau Forest, sewage, Dandora dam site, matters that affect the public in a way that the public must know. Or if you're giving information, if you're giving a warning to the public. I had some 2 cases, but I'll just say 3 things about qualified privilege. The more serious the charge, the more the public is misinformed. So when you inform the public in public interest matters, be careful that you don't create more damage. The story you are giving should not have its own legs. Be factual. Number 2, what is your source of information? A lot of you, of course, have this very nice statement. My sources are privileged. My sources are confidential. But the source is you, we know. So, even as you protect your source, be careful that you don't allow those sources to grind their own access. Don't allow them to use you or to pay you, publish a story because you don't like Lenaola. But there are many people who don't like my face. So just say, Kajama ametoka huko kuchunga ng'ombe. You just go back. One guy actually tweeted, Lenaola should go back and look after his cows. He has no business being in the judiciary. Now what have I done? Kazi yangu tu. So again, don't allow people to grind access using you. Number 3, what steps have you taken to verify this information? Verification. Is it that when my brother here speaks, and because you are his friend, you drink together at a bamboo cask, you assume that everything he says is true? We do want to verify that information. And what is the urgency of the news? Why would you want to publish without verifying? We know that news is generally very urgent. And news is a perishable commodity. A lot of you know, of course, that if you don't publish a story within 24 hours, another story has come. That's why the beauty of those of us who get attacked on social media, we know that after 24 hours, they move on to something else, and you are forgotten for a few hours or a few days. So it's important that you verify, and if it's not urgent, go further to verify the news source. Then, what is the timing of the publication? You and I know that timing is exceedingly important, because you can create a story whose timing during election violence, what you say can fan more violence. If you remember the case of Kabuga, we were discussing Kabuga this morning at tea. And if you remember that radio called Mill in Rwanda, the timing of the language of that radio fanned violence more than those who are carrying machetes. So when you write, what is the timing, what is the environment you're writing, and what language are you using in that particular case? One of the cases which I have always found fascinating, because I was there when the incident happened, is the case of JP Mashira, trading as Mashira and Company Advocates versus Wangezi Mwangi and the Nation Media. In that story, because I was in the Supreme Court building when the advocate was grabbed by the neck by a lady, when I remember there was that long-standing case of Boy Committee Farm in Kiambu. There was a lady called Grace Wahun Njoroge. That lady was in the High Court every single day for the longest period that I remember. So somehow she picked on Mr. Mashira, grabbed him by the neck, nyonged him nicely, and we were all there, so we had to separate them, and we thought the story had ended. But the following day, both Daily Nation and Taifa Leo, on their front pages, had Mashira being comongwed. And then the story said that Grace Wahun Njoroge was nyongaing Mashira because he had eaten some money, which was due to Moi Committee Farm. What does Mashira do? Mashira calls the Nation and tells them, this is where the story came from. I don't deal with, she's not my client, I don't have any money, but I'm acting for another faction of Moi Committee. So the court said, how could they have received that information? How could they have had his side of the story, but they still pursued their own story, that he was nyongwed because he had stolen some money from her. So they were hit in damages because they were reckless in publicizing a false story, even when they had the true narrative in their hands. And that's a lesson for all of you. So I have spoken about the parting shot on privileges. Remember, verify the story, allow a party to comment, and number 3, the timing. The third defense is the defense of truth, ukweli. If you can prove that the story is true, then the claimant has no chance of success. But the proof is required of you, the journalist. If you say it's the truth, prove to the court that it's the truth. So you can't come and say, this is the truth, then you sit down. You must show why it's the truth. And that's why, if you follow the steps I've spoken about, the verification, the truth, the what, then it's easy for you to do that. Another interesting defense that journalists raise in every defamation case I've ever handled as a judge or an advocate is the defense of honest opinion, or what is called fair comment. So you say, this is my opinion about you. But Section 15 of the Act says, in any action for libel or slander in respect of words consisting partly of allegations of fact and opinion, a defense of fair comment shall not fail only for the reason that the truth has not, every facet of the truth has not been proved. So what you need to do as you raise this defense, when we were in National Youth Service, whether did you go to NYS? When we were in the pre-university NYS, we were told, when you want to lie, lie near the truth. When you want to be a good officer, you can never be a fully good officer. You can only be karibu na mzuri. This is saying, as much as possible, let 75% of the story be true. It is easier to define 25% of untruth than 75% of untruth. So even the defense of fair comment, my advice would be, and the fair comment, please ensure that you keep to the truth. And the legitimate, this defense can only succeed if you say the following. Number 1, the subject matter of the comment pertains to a matter of legitimate public interest. And again, I spoke to public interest at length. Number 2, the facts upon which the comment is based are true. And again, I've spoken to that. And then number 3, and I repeat again, fairness. The comment must be fair. Your opinion must be relevant and be based on facts. One of the things that journalists, and this now the defense number 5, one of the things that journalists perpetually refuse to do is what is called an offer of amend. An offer of amend is where you publish a story, your source is chwara, then you decide, having looked at the story again, actually you are wrong. So why don't you apologize? Why don't you say, instead of paying you 10 million, we'll pay you 2. So we don't go to court, the stress of going to court and so on. In 2017, you remember we nullified the presidential election. And we took a beating like no other. One of the stories published by a media house was that I was seen with some of the lawyers for the opposition then. I was in communication with them on my phone. They published 98 pages of my call logs. And of course, it was false. So I threatened to sue. My friend, when a Supreme Court judge threatened to sue, ran. So this media house, they came calling and saying, you are our friend. It was a mistake. It was the moment. Remember timing. The story, of course, was page 3 of the paper. The full page. Mwilu Lenaola. So we both sued. I didn't sue. When I gave my demand, they came talking, and they offered to do an apology, and they also paid me a few millions, and I bought a few cows. But we haggled over where the apology would appear. Again, journalists are very happy. What they do, they publicize the defamation on page 1. But the apology is near obituaries or near auctions. Nobody looks at those things. So, me being me, I told them, unless you put it on page 1 of the paper, and prominently so, I'm going to sue. So one morning I woke up pleasantly to find, we are sorry, Lenola is a good guy. Yeah. So the point is, whatever you do, if you find that you have no defense, negotiate. Offer and amend. It will save you. Because by the way, in the case of the Deputy Chief Justice, whereas they paid me a small amount, because she went to court, her judgment was much higher. And that the paper suffered much more because they paid the lawyers, they paid her, and yet in my case, once we negotiated, the matter ended, and I carried my apology. It's in my safe, in case somebody one day says I'm not a good guy. What are the reliefs in a claim for defamation? The first is an injunction. You see in the cases that you've handled, that a lot of judges now say you will stop the publicization. And especially in social media defamation, we are now getting more and more injunctions to stop republication. And one of the cases where this happened was in the case of former central governor of Central Bank, Michael Cheserem, versus immediate media services. Immediate media was one of those first alternative media houses. And when he was governor of Central Bank, they said a few things, and he got an injunction. Of course, the popular one is defamation. I mean damages. If you can prove that your dignity was lowered, that your reputation was harmed, then you're allowed, then you are paid damages. And one of the best cases I've read in this regard is the case of former Chief Justice Johnson Ivan Gicheru versus Andrew Morton. Andrew Morton wrote a book about President Moi the statesman, and in that book he wrote a few things about Justice Kwach, Justice Gicheru, who handled the Ouko Commission of Inquiry when Robert Ouko was killed. By the way, Nancy and I demonstrated when he was killed, so even as we have a history of demonstrating. So damages are a common. Then I spoke about retraction or apology. These are the three most obvious damages. Let me quickly now go to defamation in the digital age. Contrary to what people say, every single thing I've said about defamation generally applies with equal force where the digital content is a subject of defamation. So don't assume that because you are anonymous, and I should tell a story because I've been looking at this guy. What's your name, sir? Billy. So Billy, you wish to know that a guy who looks like you, in the 2022 election petition, he said that I had received a lot of money from a member of parliament in my local up there in Karen. And we then my lawyer, Don Kipkorir, we tried looking for this guy through his social media handle. The social media handle had a very beautiful girl called Karen Wanjiko, and the picture of a very beautiful girl. We went to CAK, Communications Authority, we went to Google, we went to Meta. We didn't find your lookalike because we were assuming it's a girl. We found a girl at Multimedia University. We found some girl in Karatina carrying the name, but I know the person we're looking for. But one day, a big shot in government used another source, and the next thing we see our guy in Mudega police station saying, my name is so-and-so. Now his real name, his picture was there. You know that thing of a DCI where you stand in front of your charges. The charge is behind you, and then so your lookalike was there. Finally, I said, but this is not, this guy with beards, it cannot be Karen Wanjiko. So when I finally met him, I told him, my friend, do you know how much damage you have done to me? I have had a very quiet life as a lawyer, as a judge. Now you are calling me corrupt. He said, Mzee, I was paid 3,000 by some politician. I said, 3,000 for ruining the reputation of a judge who has come from Baragoi, full primary school, to Parklands campus to become a judge of the Supreme Court, and you're just spoiling his name like that. Mtu ametoka mbali bwana. So he thought by using Karen Wanjiko, head of state commendation, and the picture of Karen, he could escape. He is now facing criminal charges under the Cyber Crimes Act. So don't assume that if you use a pseudonym, you are safe. But of course, we know that the problem with the social media, with the digital age defamation, is that we are looking at wider dissemination, and I spoke about that. We are speaking about global reach. I am the vice president of the Residual Special Court for Sierra Leone. My office is in Freetown, Sierra Leone. I sat as the deputy principal judge of the East African Court of Justice in Arusha. I am the president of the Association of International Association for Refugee Law Judges. My office is in Haarlem, Netherlands. So all my colleagues across the world were telling me, hey, Judge, we are seeing all this. Is it true? I said, of course it's not true. 1 billion shillings. How? And the guy said, I was captured on CCTV cameras. I said, so CCTV cameras can count money. So of course the story didn't make sense. And what he had done, of course, he took the star, the image of the star, the headline, blah, 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 and then superimposed his story on the star. So I have a letter from the star saying, this is not our headline, this is not our story, but the public will not know the difference. So my reputation was damaged because of one act of a reckless man for 3,000 shillings. So of course, global reach is huge. Then there's permanence. One gentleman who was died very unfortunately somehow, when I was at the High Court, wrote a story on Twitter about me. I had made a judgment which was very politically sensitive. I sat at the High Court on those days, and you really remember, it was after 2010, so all the hot cases were coming on my table. That's why my hair just stopped becoming black. I wrote a judgment. Then the guy wrote a very bad story about me the same day. I have tried to remove that story from Twitter, from the internet. It can't get out. Meta, it's just there. So that it is permanent. The damage is also permanent. Then there is difficulty in retraction. If I didn't get your lookalike to pull down that story, and even after he had pulled it down from his Twitter handle, it had been retweeted. So now the other handles have the story, it is permanent. And I cannot kill it. So that it is important for us to be careful about what you do. Let me tell you about a judgment written by a judge in New Zealand called Ian Wishart versus Christoph Murray. And this is important for you because you have a Twitter handle, you have a Facebook page, you're on Instagram, and you, like I said earlier, your story is republicized, republished, retweeted, and so on. This judge said, I consider that the notice board analogy is apt in considering publication via Facebook. The host of a Facebook page has established what is essentially a notice board. It may be a public notice board on which anyone can post comments. Now, look at your Facebook page or mine like a notice board. And now listen to what I'm going to say. It may be a private notice board available to a specified group. Some of you close your Facebook pages to only your friends or only a few people. In either case, you, the host, had the power to control the content by deleting postings. The moment you did not, it attaches to you. The host also has power to control those who post on the site by blocking users. If you don't block a user and the user uses your notice board to post his content, it is your content because it is your page. Those blocked may include potential plaintiffs affected by what is posted but unable to see the offending content and complain. So that you may block me so I don't see the content, but in fact, once I know of the content from somebody else, I can suitably sue you even if I'm blocked on your page. Those who host Facebook pages, you and I, are not passive instruments or mere conduits of content posted on their Facebook page. They'll be regarded as publishers of postings made by anonymous users in two circumstances. The first is they know of the defamatory statement and fail to remove it within a reasonable time, in circumstances that give rise to an inference that they are taking responsibility for it. So if you don't remove it, it means you're also accepting that you're affected by what they notice. The second is where they do not know of the statement, but ought to know in the circumstances that the statements are defamatory. So that it calls for only one thing: responsibility over your social media pages. If you find anybody is posting offensive content, don't sustain it. Delete it. Block that person. And I've done that many times. Oh, by the way, again in 2022, a very interesting thing happened to me, and I think I'm the biggest sufferer in the Supreme Court. 9 Facebook pages were opened in my name by people I didn't know. And they had picked my photograph from the internet. And then what do? They first post a comment as if it is by me. Then they attack me now. So of course anybody reading it will think Lenaola is under serious attack. But they're attacking themselves because they have nothing to do with the content. So I had to go to Meta last 2023. And of the 9 pages, they closed 7 and retained my one. Oh no, they closed 8 except 1, and then they retained my official Facebook page. The one they have not been able to remove for some reason is one where there are only 2. I only have 2 friends who are my in-laws and who didn't know the better. But the picture, the profile picture, is one of a good lady called Vera Sidika. Why they chose that good lady, I do not know. I do not know her. Why they chose her as my Facebook page, I don't know. The point is, if we are to find ever who opened that page, of course, they are liable for defamation. If I ever to find out, I didn't bother to follow up because the election died, I was left on, and so on. In the case of Ambe versus Onyango, a very interesting case, I must say, Ambe versus Onyango, the Judge Ongeri was confronted with a case where in a WhatsApp group, one person wrote, interesting also because it carries my name. So the words were, Isaac, you are being modest. We can't allow one person to muzzle or deny our children the development that they need. Now, top of your mind, are those words defamatory? The judge found those words to be defamatory. And Onyango was ordered to pay Ambe 2 million shillings in damages. The bigger point about that judgment which I want to make is this. Do not assume that you are safe from the whip of defamation only because you are posting in a WhatsApp group. If you post defamatory words in a WhatsApp group, remember, a group has more than one person. So that issue of publication is not like what I was talking about in the Muli and I. If in our class WhatsApp group, we are 176 because we're double intake at the university at Parklands here. I am the chief admin of the group, Cheza and Mimi. I sometimes get a lot of content which is either defamatory of somebody outside the group or somebody within the group. And as a chief admin, I am very quick to delete for everyone. Because you don't want to be caught up by this law that says even WhatsApp groups are susceptible to defamation. So I'm very careful. Sometimes I wake up at night, I'm an early riser, I wake up at 3, 4, and so I read through the group from the last time I read it. Before guys wake up, all the matope is out, and the group is clean. I encourage you to do the same for your groups. Msitukute tukwa Judge Ongeri, mutingwe 2 million. I think it's important also to ask yourselves the question, who do you sue in digital defamation cases? Who do you sue? I've spoken about our friend, Karen Wanjiku. We couldn't find who to sue. And I've also said sometimes you can sue the host of a Facebook page or a WhatsApp page or whatever else. But the case of Meta says you can even sue the company that runs the search engine. If you try to delete them, you can't delete. Then even the search engine company, Google, Meta, whoever else, can be liable for defamation. I've also spoken about republication of a defamatory statement. I spoke about that. In Safaricom versus Porting Access, the court held that the repetition of a rumor is libel itself. In this case, Safaricom had publicized what is called Safaricom's mobile number portability. But because of competition, this company publicized a rumor about that mobile portability. And then they retweeted the rumor. The rumor became the truth. Safaricom sued them. And by the way, now, the young lawyers, of course, you know, a company is capable of being defamed because of the business interests and all the things that they lose. How do you quantify harm done through the online platform? How? Are there any other considerations? The biggest consideration, I insist, is publication. What is the reach of this publication? How far can you go? So if you can prove, for example, like I said about my friend Amenasser, if there is, I'm not talking about him having defamed anybody, that's not the issue. I'm just saying, because of his wide reach, because he has wide followers, suppose somebody, not him necessarily, posted something defamatory on his page, and it goes across the world. Obviously, then the damages will be higher because the damage is on a wider scale than if it's just a WhatsApp group and so on. I believe in my 45 minutes, I've covered a subject which, if I were a lecturer here, I would have taken a semester to teach. There are many more things I could have said, but let me conclude by saying this. Number one, it doesn't matter that the digital era has created new dynamics. The responsibilities of journalists, the principles I spoke about earlier, are the same. Number two, you are susceptible to defamation whether in the print media or in the digital media. Number three, you have to be careful in the ways that I've said, to watch, to be careful about what you publicize. And even as you exercise your freedom of expression under Article 33, there is a duty of care under that article that you don't damage the reputation of others. So always ask yourself, and this is a question I'm leaving with you, before I publicize, have I hurt anybody? Will I attract defamation? Have I verified? If you have not, hold back. You, my friends in the media, have a huge responsibility. That responsibility, even as you enjoy your rights under Article 34 and 33, must always be guarded jealously. And you must also remain accountable both to yourself, to your seniors, and to the public at large. We in the judiciary shall continue, speaking for myself at least, we must continue to protect the media. The media plays an exceedingly important role in a country such as ours. If we ever lose the media and the judiciary, we shall not have a democracy. And so stand firm. Remain objective. Remain responsible and accountable. And above all, be true to yourselves, to your profession, and to your ethics, even in this very, very complicated digital era. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Lordship. As my colleague Lennox Sengre would say, I think we've been able to pick a thing or two, right? Asante once again for that deeply insightful and very timely address, especially in this digital era where a tweet can spark a movement and change everything. Your words really remind us that ethical journalism is more critical than ever, isn't it? Asanteni sana, and thank you so much, Your Lordship. Do we have any questions? We do?
Just please say your name and whether you are a student or the media.
Yes. We have very many questions. I will request for... Check.
Thank you very much. Your Honor, my question is on two things. My name is Mashari Wamugo from TV47. You could please talk to us about privacy, especially in the digital era. Where do we draw the line? And also the issue of public interest. Where is the threshold? What is in public interest and what is interesting to the public, especially in that sphere? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Abdimatin Bishar. I'm a student at MKU PLC, Parklands Law Campus. Now, my question is, when, for example, the media portrays information which are factual and they've done the due diligence as required, but then it ends up being prejudicial. For example, if it's a criminal case that is very high profile, now it prejudices, for example, the provisions of Article 52K, the presumption of innocence. Now this creates some sort of image, though the evidences that the media houses are relying on are very true and factual, that probably the murder weapon, the blood stain, and all the rest. But audialtering patem is not realized on the other part because the other person has not yet responded. And this particular individual, the accused person, ends up getting stigmatization, segregation from the public and the rest. Now, is the media going to be liable, though the information that they've portrayed are true, and they are all factual and they can be proved to be true? Yet, this prejudices the accused person pursuant to 52K. So how, who is going to be liable, and how is that right going to be, both of them realize the right to media and expression and the right of the accused person to be presumed innocent? Thank you.
Thank you. We have a hand behind you, or just next to you.
Good morning. My name is Billy Mia from Radio 47. I believe, Justice, you know the segment on newspaper corridors of power. What's your take on that?
Okay, so we have 3 questions, 2 more.
Thank you. My name is Tom Tubula, student at MKU and a member of the Student Governing Council. My question goes to the Justice Lenaola. It is evident that there is a rise of social media influencers and citizen journalism. What steps has the legal frameworks or the judiciary has taken to balance that these social media influencers have a right for free speech or expression, and to ensure that there is no misinformation that may lead to defamation and other.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, good afternoon. My name is Alex Mokideu from Radio 47. There's a situation where a podcast, or is it called a vodcast, where the host invites a politician, and in this case I'm talking about a recent show where the former deputy president was invited to join into this show. The host had a disclaimer running down there saying that every opinion is not of the host or the show. But then again, after this show, there has been a case, and the former deputy president has been called to by the NCAC to report to their offices and explain a few things there. And politicians, of course, jumped into it, saying that comments that he made during that podcast were not really, they were sensitive comments about the 2007 elections. So is a disclaimer enough to protect the host of a show and the show generally?
Thank you. I think we can respond to the first 5.
Thank you very much. Let me begin with Alex. Alex, remember what I said earlier about the need to verify information, the need to be careful about what you publicize, and a disclaimer is a good thing, but it only reduces your responsibility by a measure. It doesn't take away your liability should it be proved that you were part of the publicization of defamatory remarks. So yes, it can be, it's like what is called in criminal law mitigation. You can say, I put a disclaimer that these are his words, not mine. It can only reduce liability. It does not remove it completely. So that's straightforward. Wamugo, privacy. The Constitution, Article 31, protects the right of every person to their privacy. So again, you must read Article 31, Article 33, and Article 34 together. Media freedom under 34, freedom of expression under 33, and privacy under 31. And you must read them together. So again, you must always ask yourself the question, is what I'm writing an invasion into privacy? For example, one of the things that I keep seeing these days is where DCI goes to the, without getting a court order, they go to a bank and retrieve all the transactions of your bank statement. That is patently unlawful. And we have written judgment, including by myself, saying under 31, my personal information is my information. And for you to publicize it, I must give you authority. So, or for example, the HIV status of persons. We have many judgments now where at work, if your boss publicizes your HIV status, that is a breach of privacy under Article 31, and they're getting paid damages for that. So my advice would be, even as you enjoy your freedom under 33, you are still limited by 31, and you are still limited by the limitation of rights under Article 24. So be careful how far you go in publicizing private information. Public interest and interest of the public, I did say earlier, always ask yourself the question, if I publicize this information, what is the benefit to the public? You don't publicize information for the sake of it. And so there's some information that must be known by the public. And in fact, in my notes, I said, is the public interested in your information? Is it useful to the public? Does it make your public better? Or is it just rumors? So again, it calls for responsibility, introspection, and for you to ensure that whatever you publicize benefits the public, doesn't hurt the public. Look at what I wrote, what I said about the National Cohesion Act. If you publicize hate speech during an election, and the country burns, will you have helped any cause? You haven't. So always ask the question, what is the benefit of the public and is it useful to it? Bishar, you know, what is that rule about not discussing court proceedings? Sub judice. For some very strange reason in this country, I now see that even lawyers have completely forgotten about the sub judice rule. The sub judice rule do not comment, do not make opinions about matters that are in court. But these days, all those talk shows in the morning, on Citizen, on Nation, on KTN, on yourself, people are discussing cases and giving their own opinions. We are tafungwa. You know this. That is not your work. So what I always say to anybody who cares to listen, please let the courts do their job. Because one of the problems with allowing the publicization of opinions about cases in court, even judges and magistrates are human. They can be influenced. If the public wave is hang Barabbas, the judge will say, anyway, maybe we just hang this one because the public wants him to be hanged. But is that the law? What happens to the presumption of innocence? So again, let's be careful in how we comment on cases in court, not to prejudice the people who have been tried. So for me, it's a straightforward matter. It just needs for a balance. It's okay to report what happened in court. There was a time we would have court recordings verbatim of certain cases. In the petitions for elections, we are on TV until midnight, live. So if then you report about what I said in court, there's nothing wrong about that. What is wrong is adding chumvi, which then prejudices the defense of the accused person, or influences the mind. You know, in the US, as you know, because these cases are heard by a jury, the jury is sequestered. They are not allowed to mingle. So they don't watch TV, by the way. Because as you know, in the US, if it's O.J. Simpson, that trial, it was in the news 24/7. And many people are giving their views. You influence the jury in how they think of the case. So you close them in a room where they can't meet anybody. Here, we can't close in our judges. We don't have juries. So it's just important we all calm down. Billy, interesting question. Corridors of power. I'm in a group where I have about 4 journalists in that group. And every time they pick on a story from Corridors of Power, and what the Nation writes on Sunday, is called, Sunday Nation is called what? That other page. Palava. Corridors of Power and Palava, they tell a story, you can almost know who it is. But they never mention a name. So if you sue, they will ask you, why do you think it is you? So you don't want to fall into a trap of the guilty are afraid. So it becomes a juicy story. We even know who they may be talking about. But you can't sue because, you see, one of the things is the words used must attach to you. But if they are attached to, you can find 5 people that, any 5 people can be the victims. So for me, the best thing I do, I read them, by the way. When I open the Star every morning, I go to Corridors of Power first. Because one time, there was a journalist in the Star who also didn't like me. So every other week, something has happened in my court. I know it's about me, the writing, but because my name is not there. So it's juicy, it's interesting. But you can never file a defamation against the Star or the Nation. Tom, social media influencers, the regulation. You know, I take the view, I don't know what Dimas thinks, but we need, as a country, like other countries have done, to be balanced in the way we regulate social media. We don't want to go the route of banning social media like other countries have done. Yet we also don't want social media to become so irresponsible that they cause more damage than good. So for example, the social media influencers, I've had a very big conversation. I'm the patron of the Kenya Court Reporters Association. In fact, I'm going to meet them later today after my other appointment at 1:30. And we have been trying to bring in the, this singular individual, people who run online papers, online podcasts and stuff, to tell them, if you're saying you're a court reporter on an online digital platform, join us. Join the association so we can all guide each other in terms of how far do you go, the issues we're discussing now. But these guys don't want to be regulated. They don't want to be under any association. They don't want to be under any law. They say we have Article 33 and Article 34, tunakufia hapo. But my view is, let us create some measure of regulation, which is not inhibitive or restrictive, but also creates responsibility. So we don't have mercenaries, or what Mwenda was calling guerrillas, who have no control, nobody controls them, and they do damage to reputations. And when you sue them, they have nothing beyond their iPhone and their computer. So you can't even recover anything. So I believe strongly, Bishar, that, Tom, that we need to find a regulation, but balanced under the Constitution. I spoke, Alex Mokidao, I answered you. But let me just say this, in concluding this set of questions. Public interest is important, but individual interest is as so let us balance public interest and individual interest. Freedom of the media is important, but it's limited by the need to preserve privacy, also to ensure that we don't do damage to others. So these are the balances I'm talking about. We are not closing any door, but we are saying don't become reckless. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mike from TV47. I think mine is just a clarification, because I still fail to comprehend why would a constitution article be unconstitutional regardless of when and under what circumstances it was drafted. Just clarify that, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Fred Indimuli from TV47. My question is almost close to what Alex asked earlier, but slightly different. We do live TV conversations every morning, and you mentioned that. What mitigation would I, as a presenter, have in case one of my guests gets excited and in that way slanders someone, and there's no way of taking it back? It also happens on X Spaces and TikTok Lives a lot, which many people attend. Thank you.
My name is Some. I am a student and also a member of the Student Governing Council. My question will be, what is the balance, rather, what will be the middle ground between regulating media for public good and safeguarding the fundamental freedoms safeguarding the fundamental freedoms and limitations enshrined in the Constitution?
I am Vincent Wanyoni. My question is about, does the use of silhouettes regarding individuals amount to intrusion of privacy, or should it be regarded as freedom, as an art of expression, like, how do you call it, being creative?
Your Lordship, did you get that question?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So we have one last question for this second set of...
Good afternoon. My name is Sidra Shabir. I'm from MKU PLC, a student. My question is that social media is borderless in nature. What happens when a defamatory remark is made abroad, but it is accessible in Kenya and it causes actual reputable harm?
I love your questions. Thank you very much. It means you have thought through and you heard me. I didn't waste my time. I did say about social media that is borderless. I said it's wide dissemination. It doesn't matter where it is made. You know, in arbitration, there is a statement about the seat of arbitration. You know, so it must be in a particular place. Defamation does not have borders, so that if it's made in the UK and it's about me, I can sue in the UK, or I can sue here. I spoke about Meta being sued, including here. The other day, you remember there was a story about Google being sued here, and they, in one case, they said they have no office in Kenya. Google Kenya is not domiciled here, but in fact, the judge said, no. You can be sued here. You can get a judgment against yourself here, and then in terms of enforcement, you got the Foreign Judgments Act. You enforce it where they have property. So yes, you can sue anywhere, enforce the judgment using now the law. In our case, if it's London, then you file the judgment in the London courts and the executor and get your damages wherever they are. Kibet the Bull. Is it called Kibet the Bull? Yeah. Silhouettes, cartoons. Do you remember a case of Charles Hebdo? Netherlands, French. So it's important to know, do you read Mad World on Saturday? Caricatures. Do you remember Ridiculous? So what matters is, is the action, is the painting, is it something that you can create a case out of? If it's a silhouette about me, but there is one where Mado drew me. So he drew me in my judicial robes, but carrying a spear and a shield. So I'm a judicial warrior, I guess. Could I have sued? Of course not. So it matters not. What matters is, has the silhouette, has the cartoon, has the caricature created the elements of defamation which I spoke about? Have you been injured in your reputation? Have you been soiled in your reputation? Have people shunned you? So it all matters on how you can prove it within the elements of defamation. But if you are to ask me, in a free world where we encourage artistic expression, I wouldn't bother. If you look at The Nation, every other day, even today, they drew Suluhu Hassan. If you look at, I think it's Kalonzo that the Star, they put horns. The Chief Justice looks like she looks on those cartoons. We are all on cartoons. I have been there myself. Artistic expression must allow you to express. What matters is if it doesn't go beyond the level of defamation. So that's my answer. So I spoke about regulation of media, and I say it should be limited, but not to affect the rights under the Constitution. So I guess that for people like Dimas who are in the media world, to begin a conversation about how far we can go. And if we find any laws that are unconstitutional in the Cybercrimes Act, I think we should strike them down. But any other law that merely limits and calls for responsibility and accountability, I think we should keep them. Which takes me to then Ndimuli's, Mike's question. Mike, I think you misunderstood me. In fact, to say that as an article of the Constitution is unconstitutional is a legal absurdity. The Constitution can never undermine itself. The Constitution must be read holistically, each section, each article speaking to each other. And that's why I said read Article 31, but not in isolation of 33 and 34. Read 34, not in isolation of 25. So that you enjoy rights with the limitations. And all of them must come from the Constitution. I think what you misunderstood me when I said that Article 1, Section 132 and Section 169 of the Penal Code are unconstitutional. In constitutional jurisprudence, it is statute, sections of statute that can be called unconstitutional. Do you understand that now? So it is a section of a statute, of a law, of a legislation that can be unconstitutional. One time in the case of Reverend Timothy Njoya, one judge attempted to say that Section 47 of the old Constitution was unconstitutional, we all laughed. Because it's basic constitutional law, no section of the Constitution can be unconstitutional because that section is itself the Constitution. So that is the reasoning. Fred, there are many ways you can manage rogue speakers, rogue guests on your show. Those who watch Jeff Koinange live may have noticed that a couple of times he has chased away some people from the show. I recall one moment, some years ago, two members of the legal profession were on the show that was then hosted by Mushiri Wahome Mushiri, called Up Close and Candid. And one of the lawyers said, that is bullshit. And Wahome hit the roof, told the director, cut, threw the guy out of the show, and continued with the other. So if you ever find that a guest is openly being defamatory of another person, you either tell them to stop or you cut and throw them off your show. It does happen in the US a lot to avoid defamation cases, that you allowed someone to come and defame you on your show. Because remember, in such a case, the first defendant will be your host, your guest. The second defendant is the host. The third defendant is the media house. So why would you want to get yourself into a suit? Is that guy's presence on your show so important that he must remain for another 2 minutes? So control your show. Take charge of your show. Also, before they come on the show, if you don't have it already, CEO, have guidelines. So they read this before they come to your show. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. Give them the don'ts. Because if they do, then you're able to control them because they know what they cannot do. So that even if you're going to mitigate by saying, oh, those are his views, not ours, the damage has been done, and you publicize it by giving him audience. Remember, the show is yours, not his. So just find a way of ensuring that you don't bring cantankerous characters, people who have no rules, have no respect for the rights of others. You can do that, but again, I much prefer that you give them the don'ts. So by the time they come to the show, they know that they are limited, including that the host has the right to control the show. I've seen many guests who take charge of the show, including some big ones, you know them. So if you allow them to run the show, it's no longer your show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The very last set of questions, if there are any. None? Oh, one more.
Yes, Your Honor, a practical experience here. I would like to have your take. There was a case between Justice Fisram and the Standard Group. The Standard wrote a group, I think the headline was Unfit for Justice or something. He sued, and they were citing a report by the LSK to a parliamentary committee. He was also given an opportunity. You know the way we call someone, you don't answer my call, I want the newspaper to go to bed. And the newspaper was arguing, we tried calling you, but you never got back to us. We sent you texts, but you never responded. So the argument here was absolute privilege, because they got this report from the LSK, which had been given to the committee. How then, because I think he was awarded about 20 million, or about 26 thereabout. Then how do you balance all that?
I wouldn't want to criticize the judgment, but I remember the case. President Kibaki had nominated my brother and friend Al-Nashir Visram for Chief Justice. I think he had nominated Kyoko Kilkumi for DPP, and he had nominated Githu Muigai for Attorney General. I still insist that you must give the other person an opportunity to respond. And if they don't, again, write in your story We reached out to Isaac Lenaola. His phone went unanswered. We sent him a text. That will always act as a mitigation. What I was calling, it reduces your liability. So if for example, the judge was to give you 20 million, he will say, because he had an opportunity to respond, but he didn't, we reduce the damages by this amount to just cater for that fact. But ultimately, the judge will look at the case on its own facts against the law. In this case, the judge, in his wisdom, found that there was defamation and hit the standard. I remember this case very well. So that's all I can say. But just be responsible, be careful. So let me close because there are no other questions. Sorry. Oh, Mwenda.
Thank you so much, Your Lordship. Mashalia's question has reminded me of an incident. I remember in 1990s, the book you mentioned, I think Andrew Morton, there was a case where Biwott sued both the writer and also, I think it was Andrew Morton and another book that mentioned Hugo killing, and he also sued the bookshop that was selling those books, and I think, if I'm not wrong, he was awarded a hefty sum of money. So again, that is also an issue of interest that shows the extension to which defamation can go. Even a bookshop can also be caught in that. Do I want you maybe to just mention that? Thank you.
I have it. I have the Biwott case in my speech, and the reason why I am happy that you mentioned it is because Book Point at Yaya, my friend Shan, I buy my books there. Chan, they were sued on the element of publication, that the book came from the publishers in London, but the bookshop that publicized it in Kenya was Book Point. So I think that's a point, that sometimes publicization and publication can go beyond. And now look at it in the social media world, at the digital era. If you publicize it in your page, it goes beyond you. Everybody who has republicized it is liable. Let me close by saying this then. To the students of law, I wish you well. You are on the verge at some point in your career of joining a very, very wonderful profession. Nancy and I have been advocates for 34 years. We don't look that old, do we? We've enjoyed every moment of it. Her in teaching and practice, me in practice and being a judge. Let us uphold the standards of our profession. And you can only begin by doing it now. Yesterday, some advocates were admitted to the bar. They went to Quiver Lounge in Kilimani with their gowns and their wigs. And they were smoking shisha, they were drinking, and then they removed their gowns and they put the wigs, they removed the wigs and put them on the waitresses' heads. Now, that is horrifying to me as a lawyer. You are cheapening our profession. And so standards in our profession must be recovered. It's only by yourselves. We are on the verge of retirement, but you're coming in. We are called a learned profession. We are called a noble profession for a good reason. Let us never cheapen, abuse our profession. To the media practitioners, I repeat my earlier words. You are an important cog in the wheel of our democracy. If we ever lose you to either patches, if you get bored for stories, if you get bored to kill stories, if you write stories that are not factual, if you seek glory more than the truth, I always wonder why in this country it is becoming easier to sell falsity than the truth. What is so painful about speaking the truth, or publicizing the truth, or preaching the truth? What is so difficult about following the law? Kenyans are more and more breaking the law as if it's the norm, as if it's fashionable. What is so painful about following the law and keeping to the law? A society is expected to be an orderly society because we follow laws and rules. But if in every profession we break down these rules, where will we be in a few years as a country? So even to you, my friends in the media, once again, well done, Cape Media. Please be the beacon, be the light, be the leader in professional ethics within the digital era. Guide the country, lead the other media houses. And very soon, small as you may think you are, you'll be a powerhouse that we shall all look up to. I've really enjoyed this interaction. Please call me again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Lordship, for engaging with us very candidly, and for everyone who asked a question and made this conversation rich and relevant. Asante sana. It is not every day that we get to hear from the Supreme Court bench, especially on matters that touch on our everyday activity as media practitioners. We've gone home feeling much better. We learn something every day. Have we learned something today? Have we? Asante sana. We have, Your Lordship, we are very good people, so we have something small for you. Before the vote of thanks, I will invite Irene Mbaya on stage. Irene Mbaya, lead producer, Radio 47. Makofi ya producer tafadhali. Okay, thank you, Irene. You're leaving? Okay, then I will invite our CEO to kindly do this for us. Akuje tu hapa mbele, tuko na picha, memories kidogo. Our chief guest, asante sana for engaging with us. Makofi. Thank you so much, Honorable Justice Lenaola. From Media Council of Kenya. Yes, wait. Bwana Kiprono, asante sana. Dean. Okay, sawa. Head of TV, tunaomba utusaidia hapo. Oh, that is Dr. Ezekiel Oira. Then I will invite yes, the director. Director, karibu sana. Okay, thank you so much. We'll invite Fred Indimuli for vote of thanks. Fred Indimuli, our breakfast show presenter. Karibu sana, makofi ya Indimuli.
Thank you so much, Andrine. My job here is very simple, it's just to say thank you. And so I'll start with our chief guest, Honorable Justice Isaac Lenaola, Judge of the Supreme Court of Kenya. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights. It is actually a pleasure. I've never been in any space with you. Today I've enjoyed it. I've learned so much. There are questions I needed answered, and I know my colleagues, journalists especially, needed answered as well. Thank you so much for considering joining this platform. And I don't think we can say much. I will ask each and every person, at least let's give our chief guest, a hearty hand. Tulia, tuifanye vyema tafadhali.